I may keep using the term milestone lately, but first paint finishing color on a piece was kind of a milestone, and this is kind of a milestone for me too. This is the body, all three rings glued together. Showing it now just after I glued it a couple hours ago. These are 24-inch bar clamps that I got at Harbor Freight for $6 each. Got 4 of them. These are the metal rods that go into holes that run through each ring. So they go all the way to the bottom where there's a small recess where you're supposed to put a washer and a nut. And then measure and cut and put another nut on the top, and so tighten it, and that pulls all the pieces together, so it adds strength to the body by having the 4 corners where all 4 pieces are being pulled together, in addition to the glue that you use on the seams. Over here you can see another one of them. And there's also over here where the shoulders go. You can see there's a hole there, and there's a hole there. The shoulder unit slips in here, and bolts go through the top of the shoulder, through this piece, and then down at the bottom where you're also supposed to put a nut, top and bottom, so that holds the shoulder in securely. So that's part of the advantage of the version 3 Droid files, is that it uses a lot less filament than the version 2, because primarily everything inside can be much thinner. There's your wall, or your thickness of the individual pieces, whereas the version 2, because there's so many pieces that glue together when it was designed, it uses a lot more filament and should weigh a lot more. Also in here we can see some of the other advantages of the Mark III Droid right here. And over here, that is the front piece with the 2 blue utility arms. And those are pre-built-in mounts for servos. So you can see holes in that area where you can see through the piece there. So the utility arms go in there, and then the back end of the utility arms stick through those holes, and they have gear teeth on them. And then you put the servos in there with a printed gear that's in the files that meshes with the utility arms. So it's a nice clean way to make the utility arms open and close that's really self-contained, because all you've got is the servo with the printed gear on it that meshes right with the utility arm. So there's no need for any levers or armatures or anything to get those utility arms to open and close. It's just the servo spins, and the gear that you screw onto the servo is directly contacting the utility arm to make it go in and out. You can also see over there the small round hole on the left. That's for and now here's my lacking of R2D2 knowledge of what they call those arms, but the arms in the side that come out of the long doors that are nearly the length of the body. The gripper arm on one side, and the interface arm in the other side that R2D2 can plug into, like the Death Star, and read schematics and things. So yeah, How the alignment went is in the front and around to here, it's pretty darn good. And then I get into the back area and it kind of goes not so good. And I apologize, I didn't bring a light out here to really make it extremely visible, but basically this panel here is where it starts to get out of alignment, where this open panel line is lined up really nice here, that runs up and down here, and then this raised edge starts to get a little bit off, and then we get over here and it's even a little bit more off left to right. And then right here, not only is it off left to right, but you can probably see this white plastic. This piece is sticking out more than it should. This piece is further in than it should be. I did my best after I glued it to kind of try and push it out. I really should have had a friend help me, but of course I'm too impatient and I try to do it myself, and you can't really, from the back, hold this piece out while pushing this one in. That takes two hands, and then you got to use your third hand to get a soldering iron in there and kind of melt the two pieces together when they're in place. And so I wasn't able to do that successfully. So about here to here, this bottom panel is jutting out more than it should. So I am going to have to sand that down some, and I'm guessing put filler up in this area to try and get that to be a smoother transition. It's off enough that I don't think I can just sand this corner down and have it line up. It's the worst. This is right here is about the worst seam between the top and bottom as far as the what alignment would the alignment this direction in and out as opposed to left and right. Once you get to over here, it feels pretty good. And then you get over to here, and this is where I'm not going to be able to fix this. You can probably see here. I go over here, it's pretty good. This, again, this thick panel line is pretty good. But then once you get to here, this panel is too far to the left. And then over here, that makes this seam off. So this one is too far to the left again. And then same thing there with this large seam. It's too far to the left. And then you're to this area where it doesn't matter, the right-left orientation, and then when you get here, it's a little off, right to left again. So this area here is kind of front to back, left to right, not aligned. And this here, front to back is pretty darn good. Pretty darn good between these. So nothing's jutting out. But it's just the left right is just off on there enough that I'm not going to be, I mean, there's no way I'm going to make that not noticeable. I can lessen it by kind of filing at a bit of an angle, so this seam comes up and then kind of angles into the other seam, as opposed to right now where it just kind of, you know, comes up to the top of this piece and then juts over where the next piece starts. So I can lessen that, but it's still going to be an off couple of panel lines, both of these panel lines, and in this this raised bit here also is off. And again, I'll just have to fudge that. So that area is just going to be fudged. It is, you know, the back pretty much of the droid, so it's not like it's going to be front facing, that it's what you're really going to be looking at. So if I'm going to have seams that aren't quite right, that's where I'd rather they would be. Now I had a similar issue down here where ring 1 meets up with ring 2 here, and I was able to do a fair job. I did just yesterday sand that. It was my second attempt at filling some of the Bondo glazing putty in the seam, and then taking a piece of 220 grit sandpaper folded in half and just kind of pushing it like up against this seam and kind of trying to make a straight line there, and same over here, and it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with that. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the upper one as nice as I got that one. Of course, that's without, again, that's hasn't been primed since yesterday when I did the sanding there. And then again, the same thing happened over here, because once again, this whole thing is one piece, the back panel from down here all the way to up here. So one big piece, and it was also, this seam was out of alignment, and I did the same thing. A couple attempts with putting Bondo glazing putty in there and 220 grit sandpaper folded in half, and I think that seam ended up coming out. That was one of those crooked seams. It came out pretty darn good. I can really feel a bump right there, and there's not a great deal I can do to fix that. I can throw like a bunch of the Bondo glazing putty down here to try and make it a little more gradual than it is, but that kind of will mess up where the greeble goes in here. I can't remember which. That's obviously the hex. I can't remember if this is a coin return or a vent or a power port between these three, but there's a greeble that bolts in there, and if I get that lip built up too thick, then yeah. So it's going to be interesting when it gets painted white how visible that is, because I can really feel it with my finger. There is a fair bump right there, but it's, like I said, it's right on that corner opening, and I think it would be worse if I tried to make that less of a bump right there. You can see a little bit of the red glazing putty. I put a little bit more on there and then sanded it again yesterday. It's just this back panel sticks too far forward, which is funny because this panel here is sticking too far forward up here, and the same panel is sticking too far forward down here. So that panel just really should have been back. But this is what I got, and I'm going to deal with it, and I think it's going to be okay. It's take the mantra of, droids aren't perfect, and they don't have to be perfect, and everybody's going to see their own mistakes more than other people, and just do my best, and it should be okay. It'll just be one of those things that, being OCD, it'll drive me nuts, because somebody will look at it, wow, cool, you built an R2 unit, wow, that's amazing, yeah, it could have been better, I've got a couple things that aren't quite smooth, blah, 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 and everybody else is just going to look at it and go, wow, that's probably the coolest thing they've seen. So just got to get in the mindset that, It's not perfect, but it's the best that I'm capable of doing at the moment, and I'll make it as good as I can, and it will turn out, I'm sure, to be fine. Again, if you're going to stand probably this far back, once I get it done, you probably won't notice anything. It's only if you're really close and if the light happens to hit something at just the right angle where it shows a shadow or depression or something sticking out where it shouldn't, that you're really going to notice it. And I'll be sanding the heck out of this corner to get it lower and adding some filler up here to get this part higher, so at least it's a gradual transition, so it's less noticeable than just jutting out. And it's kind of interesting, this whole area, if you look, this is supposed to be one panel up to this deep line. So as far as all the way along here, if this area sticks higher up down here or up here, there's room where you could put some filler material, all the way up to this panel line, and then sand it smooth and just make sure your panel line is straight, and then you wouldn't even really know it because it's just that little tiny bit in between the two pieces if it was out of alignment, where this was too far in, which I think might be the case. This might be a little bit inset, and you just need a little bit of filler just to get it up to that panel seam to stick out a bit, and you'll be fine. But yeah, I think it's going to turn out. I think it's going to turn out fine. I was just as nervous when I did ring 1 and 2, thinking, "Oh my goodness, it's not matching up," and I ended up, most of it turned out that I was able to get it fixed and get it to the point where I think once you paint it, that things like this bump here will be hardly noticeable. And again, that is almost, dead center, in the back. This port here is the absolute center of the back, and this issue's just over here, and this one's over here, so it's not up front and forward in your face, and even if you're looking at the side of it, you probably won't notice that. So yeah, there I am. I did not put the top ring in when I glued the third ring to the second and first rings here, because when I glued one of my previous videos that I showed gluing all the pieces together of the third ring, but not gluing it to the rest of the rings, I just glued the third ring to itself. I put the top ring on, and like I said in that video, you can see all this recessed area here. The top ring sits on top of that, and all the pieces all the way around, you can see, are recessed all the way across. So the top ring fits all the way across them. I know that fits right because when I had this third panel or third ring glued together, I made sure that the ring fit, so that's good news. I know that's gonna fit. Another thing, I didn't do any filler in here yet. Not sure how well it's going to show up on the camera, but because this is a curved piece, there's a lot of 3D stair stepping, because it lays layer down, then it raises up, moves over to make the circle. So I know that I'll be using the 2-part Bondo in there because it's stronger than the glazing putty to get that smooth. And then I'll also be turning the entire thing upside down. I mentioned this before. Yeah, if you can see the top of the arch there, because it prints in that orientation, as it gets up here and it prints this area, your printer has to do some bridging, and my bridging wasn't the greatest, and so there's all kinds of loose filament and stuff in this area, and that's not a problem. What I'm going to do with that, again, I'm going to use the 2-part Bondo because it's harder and stronger than the Bondo glazing putty, and I am going to put just a bunch of it up here. I'll turn this whole body upside down, mix some Bondo up, and put it all up in that area. And then I'll take a Dremel rotary tool with sanding drum, and I'll carefully just grind away until that's round. So it'll be grounding away Bondo and some of that loose plastic, and in the end I'll have, should be a nice curve. I might then do some glazing putty in it to get it perfect, because I'm sure the Bondo, it might not flow everywhere it can in here because of all the loose filament. It might not flow in between all the filaments, so that when I sand it with the sanding drum, there might be some air bubbles, air pockets that turn up. So that'll just be probably the Bondo glazing putty to do the final touch up on that. Yeah, and then I just have a lot of sanding to do between the joins. And like I said, try and fix these areas where the panels just aren't quite lined up, and where these panel lines are not lined up, which this will be the worst, because it starts, I think, can't tell with the light, I can't tell if this one is out of alignment. Well, yeah, I can kind of tell with my fingernail. It's a little bit out of alignment, I think. Well, yeah, I'm not sure if it starts here or if it starts right here, but it's big. It is definitely here is where it starts to get fairly bad. So I'll just try and sand or file that to make that less noticeable. More of a gradual than looking like two pieces that were glued together that didn't line up. Make it more like a seam that's just not quite perfectly straight. So yeah, I have got this on 2x4s, because these bar clamps, obviously, I think 3 of them I put down at the bottom of the body, and then the one in front, well, looks like the one in front I might have done it too. I wasn't sure if the one in front, if I had gone from one of these openings to the top, or if I had gone all the way down to the body, but it kind of looks like, oh yeah, I did. I went all the way to the bottom of the body there too. So the 2x4s are basically holding the whole body up off ground enough to get these clamps underneath it. And then I got a cupboard above the washer dryer, and so kind of playing a little game with, how close here can I get it to the droid to the cabinet without the rods hitting it, or like this clamp is back behind, so I can't rotate it that way without pulling it more out, and it's already kind of on the edge there of the washing machine, so not having an actual work area is kind of being a pain in the neck when you get to parts that are this big. And the other thing that's going to be kind of pain in the neck, because these parts are this big, is doing the sanding now on these seams. I think I mentioned in a prior video, when I glued ring 1 to ring 2, now I'm taking rings 1 and 2 outside to do the sanding, and for some of it I've got my arm, up through the bottom or down the top, holding the entire weight of it in the air while I sand with the other hand. And so the thing's making impressions across my skin from the opening in the bottom, and the weight of it is like holding on to that for 20-30 minutes, giving your arm a workout. Well, now it's going to be even worse because now I've got ring 3, which is not a small ring. In size, ring 1 is the smallest, and 3 is the second biggest, and ring 2 is the largest. So now the weight of this thing is going to be so much that when I take this outside to sand it, I'm not sure that I can even hold the whole thing up in my arm while I sand it. I might just have to put it like in my lap and sand it that way, because it's going to be so heavy. But I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I'm just, again, my goal this summer, I really wanted to get this thing put together and painted, and it's now being glued. I just did this, like I said, a couple hours ago, so I'm definitely going to let this sit all night and into the afternoon before I do anything. And then what I'll be doing is taking the clamps off and doing some plastic welding inside. Now, I didn't mention that some of the areas that didn't line up quite right, I was able to get my hand like through this hole here and kind of physically push the piece in the direction it needed to go by a hair. And then I had my soldering iron out here, and first I laid down the glue, and then I put the parts together, and then I put the clamps on, then I put the rods in, and then I came back and I looked and I saw some areas that weren't quite in alignment, and I did a bit of a melting together of the two pieces while I held it in the better alignment. So you can see across there I've done a little bit of plastic welding, but I haven't done any around here. So once I get the clamps off and it's had a good amount of time for this glue to dry, I'll be doing some more and better plastic welding, because it won't be me reaching down this hole and trying to do it while holding the parts in place. So I'll just be doing a little bit more up and down plastic welding to get the parts together. Here's another example of some serious plastic welding, kind of a mess plastic welding. This one I just kind of ran the soldering iron down where two pieces joined to kind of melt some of it together, but I didn't add any extra filament. I'm a bit nervous because this is obviously has bolt holes to have things bolted to it, and the two pieces join along this line here, and I didn't want to dig too far into that when plastic welding it in case this broke off or was weakened. So I just did a little bit of melting the two pieces together side by side down there. The back panel, same thing. The back panel was out of alignment, so I kind of did my best there, but the piece is so tall, it was practically, like I said, impossible for me to get my hand on it. Whoops, my hand on it at the top and pushing on the bottom to get it lined up. So I just did my best, just kind of pushed on it with a thumb, trying to get the two pieces lined up, and then ran the soldering iron across to melt the two pieces together so that that would hold the two pieces together while the glue dried, and so that would give it some more strength, so that the glue and the plastic being melted together would hopefully hold this more in shape than if I had just put the glue on and clamped the parts together and left it slightly out of alignment. I can't show you the front. I could, but I have to lift the entire thing up in the air off of the 2x4s, enough for the clamps to clear the 2x4s, and then spin it around, trying to make sure that the rods and the clamps don't smack into this cupboard, and I'm not going to do that. So just take my word when I say the front is lined up. It looked to me like the front was lined up better than the back, that I didn't have anything way off. There was a little alignment issue on this corner and the same thing on the other corner, just a little bit. And again, it was enough. There's a hole here, so I was able to kind of get one hand in there and hold the two pieces so they were better aligned, and do a little, again, soldering iron to melt the pieces together to keep them aligned better while the glue dried. So all in all, I should be pretty good on alignment in the front. I debated whether to put the vent piece in the front before gluing it, but I didn't want to accidentally get any glue on it and have it stuck, because obviously it needs to be painted blue and the vent pieces painted silver, metallic silver, chrome, whatever. I haven't exactly decided what paint to use yet, but I decided not to leave that in when I glued it together, because it dry fits so well anyway that I'm sure that's going to be absolutely fine and fit in there. But that's something else that I'm going to need to do as another video that's supposed to be quick. I keep finding more things to talk about. That's also something that I need to do before I paint this. I have to remember, okay, I've got some of these seams that I might try to make a little bit better at the bottom. I'm going to have to go over all the seams here and fix them up. But I also need to take all the greeblies that go in these openings and dry fit them to see where I'm at. You can see here the line between ring 1 and ring 2. So you've got a piece that goes in there between two rings. And again, are they perfectly aligned? Are they close enough? Do I need to take material out of the sides to get those greebles to fit in? Or material off the sides of the greebles? The only greeble that I've actually done any dry fitting with are the hexagon ports, just because they have this flat lip here that they kind of lock in and then they screw in to the bottom. And I was curious, how does that even work? And did the print line up? Because I printed the greebles on my Prusa and the body panels are printed on the Tivo Tornado. So I put one in there and it looked like it lined up really nicely in the hole. And that was only when I had ring 1 done, not ring 2. Now the hex ports here, only the top of this piece and just a little bit of this angle are in ring 2. The rest of it all is in ring 1. So I haven't test fitted one with ring 1 and 2 together, just only ring 1. So I need to test all of the greebles that go all the way around to make sure that they fit right before I paint the body, because if they don't, I'm going to have to be sanding away the finished paint, which means I might have to do touch-ups after, which, I'll probably have to do anyway, because, just the way things work out, combined with the fact that not only have I not test fit the greebles, I haven't even started on working on them, so they haven't been sanded at all, and they don't have any paint, so they're going to get wider when they get the paint coat on them. So I have to make sure that they fit in there and they fit loose enough to account for the fact that the body is going to have white paint on it, so that'll make the walls here a little narrower. And then the greeble will have paint all over it, so it will be a little wider, so you're going to have a wider block going into a narrower hole. And I want to make sure that I can make that as pain-free as possible by double checking the fit of all those before I get any paint on the body. So it's been a really good run for weather. We've had I can't remember how many days, but we have had a near record number of weeks since any measurable rain And that's allowing me to get anywhere from 2 to I'd say maybe 6 hours a day of work that I've been doing on these pieces, with the exception of the occasional day off just to take a break from it, and then my work days, which working graveyard, sometimes I get up early enough that I actually can spend an hour or two doing work, and sometimes I'm just too tired and don't want to deal with it. But I've been putting a ton of time into getting ring 1 and 2 to the state that they're in, which is pretty darn close, other than the obvious, the fairly poor areas that I have that I'm not sure how much better I'm going to be able to get them. And then, so ring 3 has had a couple coats of primer, and then today, not only did I sand these rings after I had put some filler on. You can maybe see there, I made this, I got some epoxy I can feel there that dropped on that shouldn't be there. I kind of made this seam a little bit better. The last time I sanded it, I could see a little tiny bit of the seam, because this is ring 1. This is 2 different pieces glued together here. So I tidied that up. I tidied some on the bottom up, even though you're not even going to see those since I had the glazing putty out. Some areas like this, basically anything you can see on this that's not covered with primer, I did some more work on yesterday. And then this yesterday also. Or was that today? Huh? I think I did this today. I think I'm wrong, and I think I did this. I think I sanded this today. So I sanded this yesterday. I know that's a fact, and yes, that's right. I primed this. I put another couple thick coats of primer on this yesterday, and so today I sanded this. So it's got. I put some of the 2-part Bondo on the seams, because some of the seams had a fair gap in them, and I wanted to get the stronger 2-part Bondo in the seams between this ring's pieces. So I did that, and then yesterday, and then I waited for that to dry for a day, sanded it down, and then I gave it its first coat of primer, let it sit for a day, sanded the first coat of primer to see some areas that needed some work. Did a little work on those, and then yesterday primed, put actually too heavy coat of primer on it, a bit heavier than I usually do, which I only noticed because when I was sanding it again after that coat, the sandpaper and even the flexible sanding sponge was starting to get clogged up with primer, which I noticed if you spray it on really thick, that's what happens. And that's the first time it's happened to me with the primer, because normally I don't spray it on that thick. So I was just impatient enough that maybe if I let it dry for a little bit longer, it might have not done that and been a little bit easier to sand. But I really wanted to get these glued together so I could see where I'm at with the major work that needs to be done to get those seams fixed. So today I did 220 grit again across all of this ring, and then decided that it's the day for me to glue these pieces together. And so there we are. Again, sorry, videos I just tend to ramble my thoughts after I hit record. This was going to be fairly short, just saying, hey, look at me, I've got the body all glued together now. Cool. But hopefully, again, the information will help somebody else. Hopefully other people that print these have printers in better calibration and don't have the seam issues I do. I don't know. I don't know. It was a cheap. The TiVo Tornado was cheap for me. I got it. I might have mentioned before the TiVo Tornado I bought for what was it, $175, and it came. It was brand new. Guy had never taken it out of the box and put it together, and it came with 8 rolls of Xialtech PLA filament for 175 bucks total. So I can't knock it. It's the first printer I've had that uses the rollers. It's got a belt for the x-axis, the y-axis, but all of the bed moves on the rollers that pinch the aluminum frame, and the same thing with the z-axis. It's got the rollers that roll on the aluminum frame, and you adjust them with, they have eccentric nuts that you need to adjust to get them just right. And I think part of my problem there is not getting them quite adjusted, where things seem to, the higher they get, they seem to lose their accuracy. It seems like things might bow out a bit as they print upwards, and yeah. Anyway, so good luck to all you who are working on it. Hope your printers are a little bit better than mine and you don't have quite the seam issues, but at least know that if you do, a lot of them can be fixed. Like I said, this one here and the one on the other side for the back panel were fairly off, and in the end it looks like I got them pretty good. So hopefully these won't be as bad as I'm thinking. I don't think this side isn't quite as bad as the other, but just excited to finally get the actual body together. It's also funny, I have to like back up to the wall out here in our little pantry area just to get the whole thing in the shot. So that's a good sign that you're making progress when it's so big that you can barely fit it in the shot all the way backed up to the wall. Okay, next update. I'm not sure what the next update will be. Like I said, I need to let this dry and then I'll start working on this seam, but then I've also got those painted parts, the white painted battery box that I need to sand an area that had paint a little too thick on, and also repaint another coat of paint because the top of the battery box didn't get quite enough paint that I mentioned in a prior video, so I've got that to do. And then the booster covers for the leg, I need to start sanding those. The foot shells, they've had another coat of primer on them, and they are ready to be sanded again. And then the horseshoes are ready to be sanded still, so I still have a ton of sanding to do and some paint work. Tomorrow's also supposed to be a bit chance for rain and drizzle, so the humidity is a bit high, so I'm not going to want to paint, but I might very well have a chance to do some more sanding. So yay, more sanding. But yeah, there we are. R2D2's body is now basically one piece.